My name is Victor Furman. Some call me The Voice. I've always been fascinated with human nature, spirituality, science, and the crossroads at which they meet. Join me now and we will explore these topics and so much more with fascinating guests, authors, and experts who will guide us to Destination Unlimited. Many of us are enchanted by the beauty and mystery of crystals. How may we connect with their wisdom and healing energy? My guest this week on Destination Unlimited, best-selling author Laurelle Rethke, has been connecting with crystals and using nature's healing energy for more than 25 years. Known as a spiritual alchemist, bridge builder, and crystal maven, she is deeply grounded in an earth-centered consciousness and believes that our relationship with the natural world is key to connecting us to the divine, ourselves, and all that is. Her websites are thefairyden.com and 5centshealing.com, and she joins me this week to share her wisdom and book, Connecting with Crystals, Crystal Wisdom and Stone Healing for Body, Mind, and Spirit. Please join me in welcoming to Destination Unlimited, Laurelle Rethke. Welcome, Laurelle.
Thank you. It's nice to be here.
Laurelle, my first experience with crystals came in 1958 when I built my first crystal radio. The crystal was called Galena, and it opened to me the connection between crystals and energy. Please share with us your early path and how you developed your fascination with crystals.
I guess, like most kids, I picked up rocks and put them in my pockets. And then in the 7th grade, we had a geology week in my science class, and the teacher was a mineral collector, and he placed probably about 50 minerals, really beautiful pieces, all along the windowsill in our classroom. And I was drawn to them immediately. I couldn't get enough of them, just looking at every single one. He had a beautiful azurite cluster that looked like a flower, and azurite is this dark blue color, and that was the one I was most mesmerized with. But then, I continued my schooling, and I wore crystals in college around my neck just because it seemed like a good idea. It felt good to me, and I continued to do that into my 20s.
Like many of us who were initiated as children to the wonders and mysteries of nature and spirit, your adulting path led you away until a reawakening when you were in your mid-30s. Please share with us what happened.
I was a performing artist, and I was busy pursuing performing arts. And I just had sort of walked away from all of that. I still wore an amethyst around my neck for the most part, but I just hadn't really dived deep into it. And when I decided to leave the performance world, I was really just sort of looking around for what is it that I want to pursue next. And I wanted it to be in my spiritual path because I'd never let that go. That was always a part of me. But I didn't know what aspect of that spiritual path I would be going down. And I just happened to be at the New Life Expo with a friend, which I had been to many times before, and was open to maybe there's something here that will give me a clue. And I was walking along with my friend talking, not really paying attention to too much. But then this crystal table appeared, and I just said, give me a minute, let me look at all the stones. And I sort of just devoured each individual stone in a similar way that I did in that 7th grade science class, and popped back up and was like, okay. And we walked on, and then there was another crystal table, and I was like, hold on again. And I did the same thing for 6 or 7 tables of crystals. And by the end, I was like, maybe there's something here. So that's really what sort of started me down the path, or at least that's what I think. A few years before that, my best friend had given me this beautiful, really super clear quartz pebble. It was maybe 2 or 3 inches big, but I had gotten so separated from the path of crystals and nature in some sense, that when he handed it to me, I sort of thought in my head, what am I supposed to do with this? But within 3 years, I had really started diving deep into crystals. And that was just from that one crystal being on my bedside table as I slept.
You had mentioned never drifting away from your spiritual path. Tell us a little bit about that.
I've just always sort of had this innate connection with spirit, with looking within, doing my best to be an aligned human being, aligned to the source is sort of how I would describe it. People would come to me often, even when I was performing, I was doing a lot of musical theater out around the country. And I was the one that everyone would come to asking questions about their own spiritual path. And I think that's just because I talked about it all the time. It just was a part of me. And, I think like everyone, I did have a time when my parents passed where I walked away even from that for a few years, but it was a walk away to come closer. And by the time I was in my mid-30s, had come back to being close to spirit and knowing life was better with that.
I remember not only being attracted to the beauty of crystals, but also feeling the invisible energy, a sense of tingling, and also a sense of communication. Did you have a similar experience?
Actually, no. When I was first looking at crystals, I didn't know why I was drawn to them. I just thought they were beautiful, and I had to look at each one, but not just, per cursory glance. I really picked up each piece, looked at all of the intricate details of it, and sort of got to know the crystal as I was looking at it. But I didn't really feel it. In fact, I was already working with crystals and selling them before I felt my first stone. At least that's what I thought. What I realized later, of course, was I always felt them. I was always drawn to them. And if you're drawn to them, you're feeling them. It's just I was feeling them in a different way than other people were describing. I was taking in all of their energy through my eyes. And it wasn't until I started looking at crystals that weren't pretty that I started wondering, wait a minute, maybe I am picking up the energy just in a different way. And as soon as I sort of acknowledged that, I started being able to feel them more. Sort of that feeling it in your body thing. And also, I was really looking for a crystal that I could feel. And around the same time, I came across orange kyanite, which not a lot of people know about. But kyanite really moves energy through the body. It's sort of like a energetic superhighway. And the orange color is especially activating because it's orange. And also the trace minerals that are inside that give it that orange color are a bit more activating. And it was the first crystal that I was able to really feel. And I was almost a year into working with and selling the stones by the time that happened.
In addition to that, were there any that truly called to you in your early work?
Yes. When I first started, I was really most drawn to jaspers. And interestingly, galena was my favorite grounding stone. I just really, the hematites that I was coming across, a lot of them were being produced in a way that wasn't as natural. They would take a bit of the stone and create it in a lab. So that's actually called hematine, but I didn't know that. I would pick up what I thought was a hematite crystal from nature, and I just didn't feel it at all. And galena, I was really feeling. So I was very called to galena. And interestingly, galena is a lead mineral, and lead minerals are about transformation. If you know anything about alchemy, the Western alchemists were working to transform lead into gold. And of course, that's elusive to the spiritual path, manifesting alignment in our own lives, or shifting ourselves, transforming our spirit. It's alluding to that. So galena was a great grounding stone for me, but I really loved the jaspers. To me, they were very calming. I felt it in my body, even though I didn't feel like I felt the stone itself. I could feel the effect in my physical body, and that was very soothing. And I was also only drawn to the darker stones and the reds and the oranges and the yellows, the more activating stones as I got started. Eventually, I grew into all of the other crystals as well.
It's interesting that you mentioned that about Galena because when I was building these little crystal radios back in the 1950s and the late 1950s, it was because
Hmm.
I had a sense of communication with the Galena and also a sense of connection. And if I can say that, I can't explain it now because I was 7 years old or 8 years old at the time. But there was a
Yeah.
sense of connection, and it was more than just tuning into radio stations around the place. It was more of tuning into the universe for me.
Yes, completely. The more grounded we are, the higher we can go energetically. And so working with a grounding stone can be a huge opening for anyone who's working with crystals. I know there was a time, at least, where a lot of people didn't want to work with grounding stones. They only wanted to work with the higher frequency stones or the stones that sort of helped the upper chakras, so to speak. But to me, starting at the root, starting at the base and working your way up, really making sure that all of the lower chakras are activated first is a great place to begin to open up the higher realms as well.
And you mentioned the fact that Galena had the connection to alchemy, and I have a feeling in a previous lifetime I was an alchemist way back when.
You and me both.
Absolutely. How may our listeners, those who have never consciously experienced this, or those who have a
Mhm.
basic sense of the energy, fully open to experiencing crystals?
Well, it's going to be a different path for everyone. One of the ways that I love to work with the stones is through meditation because I know how valuable that can be when you're starting to open to the subtle frequencies of stones. But everyone will have their own path. Some people are working with the stones as jewelry makers and they start to really feel them and connect with them. And it's because they're working with the stones over a period of time with another project in mind, let's say, and that's kind of like a meditative state that they're putting themselves in. You keep the monkey mind busy with something, some activity, and they can start to open and feel the subtle frequencies of stones, which is also why a lot of people do grid work, because there's a sense of play, a sense of I'm putting something together for a particular purpose, and that keeps their active mind busy, and it allows that spirit mind to sort of open up and have an experience.
What inspired your wonderful book, Connecting with Crystals?
Well, it's interesting. I had been thinking of writing a book of my own, but I wanted it to be a disruptive book. I guess that's my Aquarius moon jumping in there. I wanted it to really shake up how people looked at understanding the properties of stones. But I was approached by a major publisher who asked me to write a beginner book. And to me, what is a beginner book? You're still going to give the same information, but I guess just from the beginning, right? So I put in some of these ideas that would be considered disruptive to me from the norm. Most of the crystal books that I'd looked at had just said, this stone works in this way. And my question was always like, well, why and how? How did we get there? And I'm supposed to just memorize how all of these stones work? That doesn't make any sense to me. Where did they get their information? And a lot of people say, that they channel, but I started realizing when I would read the same stone in 5 or 6 books, that there was a core essence at the base of it. And I started looking into that. And that's when I realized everything metaphysical or beyond the physical always comes back to the physical properties of the stones. And once I realized that and understood, well, then that means that, for instance, the whole quartz family or the whole calcite family, they all have some basic things in common, and it's just the color. Well, what is it about the color that changes it? How does the color happen? So it was sort of through that exploration that I wanted to be able to teach others or share with others in book form how they can find or how they can understand the physical properties or metaphysical properties of any stone that they look at.
It's funny that you had mentioned having your moon in Aquarius because I'm a fellow moon in Aquarian, and I think I'm also a bit of a disruptor. So thank you for sharing that. Never thought
Yeah,
of
of
it that
course.
way. Never thought of it that way. You share that crystals are potent healers. How may
Mm.
crystals lend their energy to healing?
There are several ways that I know of, but first I want to say everything that we understand now is only the tip of the iceberg There is so much more to delve into in this regard. But what we do know is when we pick up a crystal, there is an immediate exchange of electrons that happens. And so something is released and something new comes in. We also know that many of the minerals within the crystals are the same minerals within our own body. So when we bring a crystal into our energy field, there is a resonance that happens. And that's a scientific term, coming into resonance with something. And so the way I see it is that the crystal is holding this very solid structure of the minerals that are within that stone. And when we bring that into our energy field, it's not that the crystal changes us, it's that we energetically shift to match the frequency that the stone is so beautifully holding for us. And so that resonance is very important, and it's pretty immediate as well. But of course, the longer we're in that resonance, the stronger it gets.
And when we hear the word resonance, we think of vibrating simultaneously or together.
Yes, exactly. And what's interesting is the bones of the body are piezoelectric, and so are some of the crystals. And so there is, I think it's 70% of sound and vibration that comes into the body is informing the body. And so when we bring a crystal in, that resonance happens. It also shifts, it really shifts us at the constitutional level, because it's working with the bones. So the bones, we think of the bones as solid, but they're not. They're very porous. And in classical Chinese medicine, they see the space within the bones as Shin, or spirit. And when someone says, oh, she really knows it in her bones, to me, that's because it's such a core belief within them, or a core understanding within them, that they resonate that outward. And so this is another way that crystals help to affect us, that they really, as we shift to match their frequency, we resonate in a different way.
What are your favorite crystals for healing? And please share with us some of their properties.
Sure. I guess my favorite stone for healing is probably fluorite. Fluorite balances our brain. In turn, it soothes our emotions, and it will realign and restructure anything growing out of order, whether that's physical, emotional, mental, or spiritual. And this is one of the reasons I find fluorite to be one of the most healing stones. I have seen people work with fluorite and energy healing to reverse diagnoses that they didn't think they were going to be able to reverse. So to me, a very powerful stone, because of course it's working on the mind, right? It's balancing the brain, and our emotions come from our thoughts. And many would say that the things that happen in our physical body come from our emotions and our thoughts, the way we think about things. And when we shift our perspective on something, that's where the miracle lies, because then everything realigns and restructures in a new way. And so fluorite, one of my very favorite healing stones. I also really love green aventurine. It is a quartz, actually, green aventurine is, but it's a quartz that has green mica inside. Mica is very shiny when you look at it. It's reflective and protective is the way I like to describe it. But when it's in green aventurine, it's all crushed up, or what we would call brecciated, broken up. And so it's very cleansing, very healing. Like all quartzes, it's a master healer in a sense that will raise our vibration and harmonize it. So it's cleansing and opening. It's helping us to look within while we still feel safe. And it helps us to shine our own light. And it's connected to luck and abundance, because as we cleanse and brighten our own energy field, we draw more things in towards us. So I love that stone as well. It's a pretty common stone. And I guess if I had to pick a third, oh, geez. Well, I love rhodochrosite, which isn't as common of a stone, but it has these beautiful little patterns on it. And anytime there's patterning on a stone, it's helping us to repattern something. And so this is really helping us to repattern our relationship with ourselves and our heart. the way we give and receive love. It's also really wonderful for helping us to heal the inner child. And whose inner child doesn't need a little bit of help here and there? So I really love working with that stone. And I think another one that people would really resonate with is amethyst. Amethyst is a natural sedative for the mind. It really quiets us and helps us to bring spirituality into our everyday life. So we're really using those practices in everyday activities. So those are some of my favorite healing stones. I could go on.
Is there a simple crystal healing exercise you can share with our listeners who are beginners?
Sure. Gather your stones around you, and you can lie down or sit and just place the stones where you feel like they should go. Generally, we can use color to do that. Maybe the heavier stones would go at the root chakra or below. The red stones at the root, the orange stones at the sacral, the yellow or gold stones at the solar plexus, the green or pink at the heart, the lighter blues at the throat, the darker blues and purples at the third eye, and purples and clear above. That's the basic idea, that you're working with the stones along the rainbow body. But sometimes, the red, orange, and yellow stones, these are very activating. So sometimes you need to use those on the upper chakras to activate something. And sometimes you need to use those upper chakra stones to cool or calm down something in the lower chakras. So when I say follow what feels right, that's a little bit of a guide that you can use by color. But if it doesn't feel like that's where the stone goes, trust yourself. To me, one of the great gifts of working with crystals is they really help us to trust ourselves. They help us to trust our innate intuitive wisdom. And so if we follow what feels right, and then it doesn't quite feel right once we've put it there, we can play around with it and see where it feels like it wants to go. This is a great way to play with the stones, to keep your mind active so your body can open to their energy and sort of facilitate your own mini crystal healing.
My guest is Laurelle Rethke. Her book is entitled Connecting with Crystals. Laurelle, please share with our listeners where they can get your book and find out more about you and your amazing work.
Sure. My book is available on Amazon or at bookstores everywhere. You can also access the link to Amazon if you go on my website, thefaeryden.com. That is TheFaeryden.com. And under books, you will see that book, and it will give you some information on the book itself and send you to that link. You can also on that website access upcoming classes and information about the shop. I think even some video from long ago, perhaps, on that website. And then my other website is my healing website. It is 5sensehealing.com. That is the number 5, SenseHealing.com, 5sensehealing.com. And on there, you can find out about my consultations and healing therapies, which are mainly based around, in regards to the healing therapies, it's crystal and sound and energy and intuitive healings that include all of them, because they all affect each other. It's almost impossible for me at this point to not include all of them, because they're all vibrational healing therapies and they all affect each other and enhance each other. And then as far as consultations, of course, I consult about the crystals. I teach quite a bit, but I also work with astrology, as we've hinted at already. So information about astrology readings and other consultations are there.
And we'll be back with more of Laurelle after these words on the Om Times Radio Network.
The cutting edge of conscious radio. Om Times Radio. IOM FM. Om Times Magazine is one of the leading online content providers of positivity, wellness, and personal empowerment. A philanthropic organization, their net proceeds are funneled to support worldwide charity initiatives via Humanity Healing International. Through their commitment to creating community and providing conscious content, they aspire to uplift humanity on a global scale. Om Times, co-creating a more conscious lifestyle.
Hello, I'm Sandy Sedgbeer, host of Om Times Magazine's flagship radio show, What is Going On? My passion is sifting through information, research and innovations from new thought teachers, speakers and researchers pushing back the boundaries of what we know about life, energy, metaphysics and the universe. I love shifting perceptions about who we are, why we're here, and how quickly impossible becomes normal when we open our minds, expand our awareness, and accept that the only limits that exist are those we place upon ourselves. So if you're the kind of forward-thinking, eager investigator of what lies beyond the current reality that most perceive, why not make a date to come play with me in the field of possibilities at 4 p.m. Pacific Time, 7 p.m. Eastern Time every Thursday, and together we can discover what's really going on.
Back on Destination Unlimited, my guest this week, Laurelle Rethke. Her book is called Connecting with Crystals, Crystal Wisdom and Stone Healing for Body, Mind, and Spirit. Laurelle, one of my personal challenges up to my late 40s was self-love and self-care. I would run around offering healing to everyone else and neglected my own. I know many of our listeners are caretakers and have similar challenges. Is there a crystal that can open our hearts to ourselves and promote that self-love?
Yes, of course. There are many stones that can work somewhat in that manner. And as I always will tell everyone, really work with the stone that calls your attention most. But specifically for self-love, self-care, self-healing, I recommend rose quartz. As a member of the quartz family, it is a master healer that raises and harmonizes our vibration. And the trace minerals within that give the color are very good for also opening the heart and bringing yourself home to yourself, so to speak. It allows fears that we're not even aware of to just gently fall away and to really bring our attention into self-care, which is a form of self-love, and that brings in self-healing. And it's, along with other stones, one of the ones that really helps us to recalibrate with the frequency of divine love and really feel that within our own hearts. So that would be my recommendation.
Another issue for many is self-advocacy, speaking up for themselves. What would you offer to them to open their throat chakras and speak their truth?
It's going to be a different path for everyone, as always. But I would, the stone that popped to mind first was carnelian. Carnelian actually got a little bit of a reputation on TikTok a couple of years ago as a stone that can help you bring love and romance into your life. That's the polite way of saying it. So, but what's, to me, the reason it worked in that way was because it supported our creativity and it gave us a voice. It helped us to stand in our power. And so carnelian is the one that popped into my mind first. But there's so many different ways to really connect with and speak our truth. And part of that could also be using a stone like celestite. Celestite really opens our connection to the celestial realms, which would include the angelic realms for those who are interested in that. And it opens a channel, so we're really communicating from that realm, or at least communicating from our true spirit self. And there are a lot of crystals that can work in that way. Angelite's also good for that, but celestite is a really powerful piece to open up to channeling information from the divine or from your true spirit self, what a lot of people call the higher self. So it's going to depend on where you need the support in order to really open up that channel of communication for yourself and just, be in your power and speak your truth.
As an empath, I was accustomed to picking up the energy of others, often offering compassion when allowed, and occasionally picking up tremendous negative energy. In the early 90s, a friend suggested I wear black tourmaline, and it was remarkable. Please share about the properties of this wonderful crystal and others that may be helpful to empaths.
Sure. As a member of the tourmaline family, black tourmaline is very cleansing. It can be aligning and balancing, and it links all of our subtle bodies together. So that would be the energy bodies that the layers of the energy bodies, let's say, which is the physical, the emotional, the mental, the spiritual, and some would add more onto. But basically, it's the energy body around us. It sort of links all those layers together and creates a nice protective shield around the body. It's also really protective against EMFs, electromagnetic frequencies. So it's a go-to stone for a lot of people in regards to cleansing their energy, creating a nice strong shield around themselves, an energetic shield, and sort of grounding them in. But all black stones are grounding and protective in some way, even the ones that are very light. Jet comes to mind. Jet is an amazing absorber of anything. Of course, it needs a little bit more cleansing because of that. But it also reminds us that things aren't as heavy as we think they are. A lot of people will use something like black obsidian for psychic protection, although my favorite one for psychic protection would be mica. And mica is another stone that's, well, it's reflective and protective is how I describe it. It helps us to look within and see our own beauty in some way, but also protect us on the outside. It kind of looks like a mirror, the micas do, when you look at them. And so it's a great mineral to energetically put around your mind if you're worried that people are trying to get into it, let's say, for psychic protection. But another really wonderful way for empaths not to pick up negative energy is just, and this comes into the realm of energy healing and energy work, but don't use your own energy. This seems to be the best advice that I can give, is when we are in a situation where we have compassion for someone else, that's a wonderful place to be. It's in a sense very nurturing for ourselves to have compassion for others, because it also allows us to understand compassion for ourselves. But when I do work on them, I don't use my own energy. I don't let any of my compassion get into the work itself. And I find that when I use energy straight from source, then I don't pick up any negative effects from that. So the crystals, of course, are amazing tools to keep us grounded and protected, but also being aware of our own energy body and being aware of how we bring healing to others is an important part of that path.
And as those of us who are in the Reiki world know, we are bringing the energy through us, not from us. We're not depleting our own energy, but we're channeling the universal energy. And that's a very important thing to remember.
Yes.
Are there crystals that may guide us in our relationships?
Yes, of course. I mean, the ultimate relationship is with ourselves. And so getting clear on our relationship with ourselves is key. Like, for instance, when I mentioned the rhodochrosite with repatterning the relationship with ourselves. But the stone that popped in my mind when you asked that question was malachite. Malachite also has these beautiful patterns and circles and scallops on it. So it's helping us to repattern something. And it really is a stone that connects our heart and our will, and helps us to create stronger boundaries, helps us to repattern our relationships with others and ourselves that have negative tendencies, let's say. It helps us to see those tendencies and repattern them so that we're bringing it more into a positive vibration for ourselves. But there are a lot of stones that really can assist us in relationships. And this is, again, where I will always say, work with the crystal that calls your attention most. Just hold that idea of what you want to work on in your heart and see which crystal gets your attention. Maybe it just shines a little brighter, or the color calls to you. Whatever it is, this crystal that gets your attention is the one that you should be working with that at this time, because we're all such unique individuals, just like each crystal is a unique representation of its whole crystal type. So, for instance, not every malachite is going to be the same. There are some that are crystalline, there are some that are fibrous, there are some that are polished, and they all work in different ways. Even the shape they present themselves in, by the time they get to you, can be telling of how this particular crystal is going to work with you. So just like crystals have all these different personalities, even within one stone type, we all have different personalities. So finding the stone that's right for you for that particular thing that you would like guidance on, by following what feels right to you in that moment, is going to be the most powerful crystal for you to use for any purpose.
You talked about boundaries. Is there a crystal that says, don't mess with me, but in a compassionate and loving way?
Well, okay. Pyrite came to mind when you asked me that question. Pyrite is an iron sulfide. So it's very grounding. It's very strengthening. It's very good for the blood. It's very good for boundary setting. It helps us to see our own power without necessarily taking advantage of others. So of course, that's something that's a spiritual truth, of course, that we're coming into, how to stand in our own power without stepping on others, and how to allow others to be in their power without them crossing a boundary or stepping on you, so to speak. That's a journey for a lot of people. It's when you're really working on the third chakra, the solar plexus, the inner sun. How do we shine our light? How do we follow our own intuitive impulses that you're really working with? So any stone that will be helpful for the third chakra will be beneficial in that process.
Crystals need the same care as we humans. How may listeners clean and care for their crystal companions?
Well, there's so many ways. Essentially, when we want to cleanse a stone or ourselves, we use the elements. And this is a much longer conversation, so I'm going to make it easy. Working with sage is working with all of the elements: fire, earth, air, and water. And it's bringing our request, our intention up to spirit. And it's a wonderful way to cleanse the crystals. A lot of people will use selenite as well, because that's using the earth element and light. And so selenite can be very helpful for cleansing crystals. Sound, if you have a sound healing bowl or even chimes, just playing these healing sounds is very cleansing for the stones. And of course, when it's cleansing the stones, it's also recharging them. All of the elements cleanse and recharge. And working with energy, because essentially cleansing the stones is mostly energetic. Unless you're rinsing the outside of the stone off with water, it's an energetic cleansing that we're looking for. And so any kind of vibratory or element, natural element, will be cleansing for them. So just seeing, when I first started doing crystal healing work, I would use a selenite and I'd put the crystals on and I'd be like, is it clean yet? I don't know. It was a process of sort of learning how it all worked. But by the time I had more stones and was seeing more clients, there was no time to put them on selenite, and there was no room in New York City. So I had to find a new way. And so I followed a cue from another spiritual seeker friend of mine. And I would just reach up to the energy of the sun, and I would pull the energy of the sun right down through my whole apartment, and sort of take my hands and spread it through and out. So a cleansing using the solar energy is what I started doing. And it really worked. And people would always comment how bright and shiny and happy my crystals were. And I think it's because I was using energy, because once you know that what you say is done, once you're comfortable and confident in energy work, then you know it's done, right? These words, so mote it be, so it is done. With these words I speak, it is done. And so when we come into that knowing and feel confident in that, we can easily use the energy of sunlight to cleanse and charge our crystals without actually having to put them in the windowsill.
And that comes to the word intention. Like all spiritual and energy work, intention is the key, as energy flows where intention goes. How may we imbue our crystal work with intention?
Yeah, well, there was an IBM scientist in the 70s who really was, in a sense, the one who kickstarted crystal healing in modern day America. And he realized that clear quartz crystals that he was working with for IBM, for computers, would hold and repeat a pattern over and over and over. And he realized, because of course he is a computer programmer, he realized he could also program the crystal quartz to repeat a pattern over and over and over. The more you work with crystals and stones, the more you work with the natural world, which is, of course, what I do. Like I work with all these different modalities, but it's all about how to empower each one of us to connect more deeply with ourselves and the natural world. And as you connect with the natural world more and more, you realize everything has a form of consciousness. So I wouldn't program my friends, so I don't program my crystals, but I do ask them for their assistance. And all I do is I take a moment with the crystal, I center and ground my energy, I connect above, and once I feel centered and grounded and connected, then I just ask the crystal to help me with what I want to bring into my life, what I wish to manifest. And then the intention is set. Now, the best stone to do that with, of course, is clear quartz. It is a pure silicate. So it both gives and receives information equally, and it will repeat that pattern over and over and over again until you cleanse the stone and ask it to hold a new pattern or a new frequency. So it's very powerful for intention setting to work with the clear quartz. However, we set intentions without even realizing we're doing it. We don't have to light a candle and do special ceremony in order to set an intention. When we go and pick up a crystal for healing, our intention is to receive healing from this stone. So in a sense, we're already working with intention with crystals. But you can also ask each crystal, whether it's a clear quartz or not, to help you with a particular thing, and it will help you. Because again, of course, where intention goes, energy flows. Absolutely. So if your intention is to go to that place to bringing this crystal into your life for healing or empowerment, then it will help in that way. I do have one caution in all of that, which is make sure the intentions you're asking for assistance on are about your own health and wellness and healing and empowerment. You don't want to ask a stone to assist you to cross someone else's boundary. That will come back and bite you times 10 is what I always hear from people who have done it, that it's really not helpful to the whole process. So if you're having an issue with someone else and you need assistance from a crystal, then the assistance from the crystal can be about how can I shift my own perspective or understanding of this, or what do I need to heal within myself to not be reactive, or how can I further empower myself to walk away from a situation, things along this line where you're really asking the crystal for assistance for your own health and well-being, as opposed to trying to take advantage of someone else's situation. So that's my only caveat with that.
Our book is entitled Connecting with Crystals. My guest is Laurelle Rethke. We'll be back with more after these words on the Om Times Radio Network.
Humanity Healing International is a small nonprofit with a big dream. Since 2007, HHI has been working tirelessly to bring help to communities with little or no hope. Our projects are not broad mandates, nor are they overnight solutions, but they bring the reassurance that no one is alone and that someone cares. To learn more, please visit humanityhealing.org. Humanity Healing is where your heart is.
Imagine yourself being transported to India, to the banks of the Ganga and an ashram in Rishikesh. Visualize that you are welcome to satsang with an American sannyasi who shares the wisdom of her guru. Your visualization has manifested. Join Sattvi Bhagawati Saraswati for inspiration and transformation every Thursday at 11 a.m. Eastern on Om Times Radio.
If I could be you,
and you could be me for just 1 hour.
If you could find a way
to get inside
each other's mind.
Walk a mile in my shoes.
Walk a mile in my shoes.
Walk a mile in my shoes.
We've all felt left out. And for some, that feeling lasts more than a moment. We can change that. Learn how at belongingbeginswithus.org. Brought to you by the Ad Council.
Walk a mile in my shoes.
So I'm a cat, and I just moved in with this new human, and she's got this little toy she's always playing with, all day long. Tap, 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 bloop, bloop. She can't put it down. There it is. Oh, and get this. She even talks to it. Last week, she asked it for Chinese, and guess what? Egg rolls showed up. Like magic. Humans have cool toys.
A person is the best thing to happen to a shelter pet. Be that person. Adopt. Brought to you by the Ad Council and the ShelterPetProject.org.
Hi, this is Bill Maher. I can find humor in almost anything, but one thing I never laugh about is cruelty to animals. If you don't get the joke either, write People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals, 501 Front Street, Norfolk, Virginia, 23510.
Back on Destination Unlimited, my guest this week is Laurelle Rethke. Her book is called Connecting with Crystals. Laurelle, you touched upon this earlier. What is a crystal grid? How is this created? And how may this be used?
Well, there's many different types of crystal grids. Usually when we talk about a crystal grid, we're sort of talking about what I would call a tabletop grid, a grid that you would put on a table or a desk for intention setting. And but there are other types. Of course, there's a crystal grid to put in a room or around your bed, for your whole home or your whole property. And then, of course, there's crystal healing, which is essentially a crystal grid on and around the body. But going back to what is a crystal grid, it's when you use more than one crystals, especially in some sort of geometric pattern, in order to have them work all together to help manifest something. So whether that's healing or cleansing or protecting the property, or, trying to bring more love and abundance into your life, there's different kinds of grids that you can use. And usually when you set an intention grid or a tabletop grid, that I like to call them, there's a stone in the center that sort of represents the main intention for the grid that you're creating. And then from there, you just create geometric patterns with other stones that support that initial stone. So similar to in Chinese medicine, when they put 12 different minerals together to create a healing prescription, let's say, when they put the recipe together for a healing prescription for someone, they have a main mineral that is the focus. And then from there, they have other things that mitigate any side effects and assist the main focus. And from there, they have others that support that. So the grid is similar to that, where there's a center stone that has that main intention, and then other stones around it to support that main intention.
Is there a connection between crystals and the Akashic records?
Well, of course, crystals can help you to access the Akashic records. And many people believe that there are certain quartzes that have information from the Akash written on them through different lines and vibrational frequencies that might be happening within the stones. And some people have been able to access the Akashic records through using those stones, which we call Lemurian crystals, or Lemurian seed crystals often. But any crystal that helps you to center and ground and quiet the mind and expand and open to the Akashic records can be helpful. I think there's probably 20 different crystals listed in my book that assist with accessing the Akashic records.
You have a wonderful shop called thefairyden.com, and that's the Celtic spelling of fairy, F-A-E-R-I-E, den.com. What will visitors find there?
Crystals, mainly crystals for healing and empowerment. But I also have crystal elixirs and some essential oils and other support tools through the process of healing and empowerment. But the main thing you'll find here are the crystals, and I tend to pick a lot of very colorful crystals. I really resonate with color and how that can help when we're using sort of a pure color of that vibration, for instance, a pure red or a pure orange, there is a vibrational frequency to that color that I find to be very healing and very empowering. So I do my best to always get these really true, beautiful colors. And I organize everything by color because it just seems the most logical way to me to really connect with the stones and use them for healing.
And what else do you offer on the fairyden.com?
Well, I also teach classes, although a lot of them aren't here. It is a smaller space. My shop is more of a private, personal shopping experience. Although I do see more than one person here at a time often. But it really is about that, because I also do healing therapies and consultations in the same space. So the crystals are here to support those healing therapies and consultations. And when one receives a healing therapy here or a consultation here, they're also essentially getting the support of the crystals because of how it's all set up. So those are the main offerings that I have here. The crystals to come and shop and connect with, the healing therapies and the consultations.
And can people sign up for information?
Of course, yeah. I have, I actually meant to mention this earlier when we were talking. People that are looking for ways to open to the subtle frequencies of stones and also open to their own intuitive wisdom, if they sign up for my newsletter, they will immediately get a response back with a link to a download. It is a crystal journey meditation download. It's about a 15-minute meditation that they can use over and over again with any crystal that they want to, just to help them center, to ground, to connect, and to open to the subtle frequency of the stone that they're working with at that particular time. And it just guides them. Of course, when you're following guided meditations, half the time you're not even listening to the guidance. It just got you into the right place to take the time to do the work, to be present, to connect. And that's the key. The more frequently that we connect with a crystal, the more we will feel its energy, the more it will empower us and help us to heal ourselves. Because this is the truth, the crystals are simply beautiful tools from nature that help us to recalibrate to our own best self.
And please tell us about your offerings at 5sensehealing.com. That's the number 5, sensehealing.com.
Sure. So I offer healing therapies. Sessions that I usually do are what I call intuitive vibrational healing sessions. Those are the ones where I'm using energy and sound and crystals just based on what I am guided to do in the moment. When I do healing therapies, I always go into that neutral healing space and I call in guidance and I just do what they tell me to do. I basically am following instructions, and it's always going to be a little bit different. So that's the work that I do the most frequently in regards to healing are these intuitive sessions. But if you just want to experience a crystal healing with a little bit of energy work, or if you just want to experience sound healing, or if you just want energy healing, I do those as well. Also, I do intuitive consultations is kind of what I do most, because someone will come to me with an issue or a problem, and then I will recommend crystals or essential oils or techniques or practices, meditations, different things that they can do. New thought patterning comes up quite a bit if you're familiar with Louise Hay's work in new thought patterning, and stories that can help them to connect more fully to that healing work and but also Qigong and other things. So I've studied so many different modalities. I can't even remember all of them to tell you, but I draw on all of that to help that person resolve what's going on for them, and including astrology. So I also do astrology readings because as some of the native tribes would say, the crystals in the earth reflect the stars in the sky, and they're one and the same in many regards. So whether the divine is above us or below us, I find that crystals and astrology and all of these other tools help us to understand ourselves better and to connect more fully to others by connecting to ourselves and the natural world around us.
The Wisdom of Laurelle Rethke. Her book is entitled Connecting with Crystals. Laurelle, one more time, please share with our listeners where they can get your books, and one more time, your websites, please.
Of course, yeah. My book, Connecting with Crystals, is available on Amazon and at bookstores everywhere. If the bookstore you have that you go to doesn't have it, you can just request for them to bring it in because it's through a major publisher. They'll be able to get it. Or you can go to my website or straight to Amazon and purchase it there. If you go to my website, thefaeryden.com, that's TheFaeryDen.com. And yes, that is the Celtic spelling, as Victor pointed out, which I have a connection to. And then if you're interested in my healing therapies or consultations, you can go to 5, Sense Healing, SENSE healing.com. And both of those websites, by the way, link to each other. So if you find one, you found them both. And I would really be thrilled to connect with any of you who feel called to connect with me.
Laurelle, thank you so much for joining us and sharing all this wonderful wisdom and the crystal wisdom and everything that you've experienced. Thank you so much.
Well, the blessing and the pleasure was all mine. Thank you so much, Victor. I appreciate it.
And thank you for joining us on Destination Unlimited. I'm Victor, the Voice Furman. Have a wonderful week.